Today on the BRS 160, we're gonna plumb this tank. Hey guys, my name is Ryan. Welcome to another week of the BRS 160, where every week we do our best to help you guys, members of the reefing community, enjoy your tanks and find new ways to explore the hobby. We do that by following the setup and progression of this 160-gallon reef tank. This week we're going to talk about the 4 types of overflows, give you some tips on installing a custom overflow, including drilling the glass, various plumbing pieces, return pumps, and then plumb our Reef Savvy Ghost Overflow to the sump. An overflow is used to get water from the aquarium safely down to the sump, and they come in a few different types. Your typical reef-ready tank comes with an overflow already installed. You can buy a hang-on overflow or install a custom overflow for standard or non-reef ready tanks. There are also tanks like this Nuvo from Innovative Marine, which have a small sump built in the back of the tank that doesn't require any real plumbing. If plumbing a tank is a bit intimidating or you don't want to spend the time or expense plumbing a tank, this is a solid option which gives many of the benefits without the hassle or expense. The easiest option for adding an overflow to a standard tank is a hang-on option, but they're pretty unpopular these days because they work by creating a siphon that goes over the edge of the tank, which works great as long as the siphon never breaks, but as we discussed last week, on a long enough timeline, everything breaks, and in this case when it does, water will go all over your floor. Some of the hang-on models do have a pump to keep the siphon going, but there's still room for failure here, so while some reefers do use them, they've become much less popular in the last decade as reefers have shifted to reef-ready tanks and custom overflows. Reef-ready tanks have the overflow towers pre-installed, holes are drilled in the bottom pane of the glass and come with all the plumbing, which makes them the most popular choice by far. Just follow the plumbing assembly directions and you're done. However, some smaller tanks like the 40-gallon breeder don't have a reef-ready version, and some of us have some special desires for our overflows on larger tanks, so building or buying our own custom overflow is the only option. CPR makes a couple of nice options for DIY overflows. The style that uses a backing requires the use of multiple gaskets between the bulkhead, overflow backing, and glass. The overflow with no back can be siliconed directly to the aquarium glass. As to which one's best, it really comes down to which one you trust to be leak-free for many years. Thousands of reefers have used silicone like this without any issue, but silicone bonded acrylic really isn't ideal. In my opinion, the gaskets are the best long-term solution, harder to mess up, and looks cleaner. This is a personal preference, but I prefer these small overflow boxes to the stock overflow towers on reef-ready tanks because the boxes take up less space in the tank and look less intrusive, but there's one big difference. The plumbing is going to come out of the back of the tank rather than the bottom of the tank, which means the tank will have to be a few inches out from the wall unless you do something like we're doing where we cut a hole in the wall for the tank and plumbing. How important it is for the tank to be flush to the wall is a personal preference and likely based on where it's located in your home. One other option is these newer custom overflows from companies like Synergy Reef and Reef Savvy, which have an ultra low profile box on the inside and the plumbing in a box on the outside of the tank. These look super sharp inside the tank, which is the most important thing to me, and I'm personally willing to trade that for putting the tank a few inches off the wall if needed. There are 3 main ways to plumb your overflow, all of which are designed to help make it silent, safe, and prevent gurgling. All 3 are named after the reefer who made it popular with the Durso, Herbie and Bean Animal. The Durso standpipe uses a single overflow standpipe with a vent hole and adjustable air valve on the top. This allows you to fine-tune a small amount of air into the overflow. Without the air vent, the pipe would pull a full siphon, which would continually start and stop with a ton of really loud gurgling. When we add the small hole with a valve, we can fine-tune a small amount of air into the standpipe to regulate the flow rate of the water and drastically reduce the amount of noise created by the overflow. The Durso is a style of overflow which most reef-ready tanks come plumb for. Hobbyists have worked to further improve on that and make it even safer and quieter with the Herbie overflow. The Herbie uses 2 overflows, a primary and an emergency. Rather than use air to control the water like the Durso does, it uses a gate valve to fine-tune the flow of water to a complete siphon with no air getting sucked in, which basically makes it completely silent. The second emergency overflow is required just in case a fish, snail, or chunk of algae got sucked into the main overflow and clogged it. While most reef-ready tanks come with plumbing for a Durso-style overflow, they typically have 2 holes drilled in the bottom, so you could upgrade to a Herbie-style overflow without a lot of hassle. To step that up one more notch, the Bean Animal combines both of these together to achieve something that's ultra silent, ultra safe, and really easy to tune. The Bean Animal uses a gate valve on the primary overflow, a secondary stability overflow with a hole drilled in it which is capable of accounting for small fluctuations in water flow while never creating a full siphon, and an emergency overflow which will handle the water if something happens to the other two. The Bean Animal is really the gold standard these days and what most of us want to use if we can. For a Bean Animal, you're going to have to get a custom tank made for you or drill your own holes in a standard tank. Drilling your own holes in a tank can seem pretty intimidating, but it's really easy as long as the tank isn't tempered glass. Tempered glass cannot be drilled and will shatter if you try. Most tank backs are not tempered, but make sure to ask the store you bought it from or contact the manufacturer first. We sell inexpensive diamond-coated glass drill bits and drill guides for drilling these holes as well as the bulkheads. You are cutting glass, so make sure to use your safety goggles and gloves. Mark your holes, which should be a couple inches from the edge of the glass and each other, and set up your drill guide. We need to keep the drill bit and glass cool, so put a ring of plumber's putty or clay on the glass and fill that area with water. Even better, do this outdoors and run a hose on the area while you do the work. On the underside of the glass, apply some masking tape to catch the glass disc the hole saw cuts out. The tape will make it somewhat easier to make a clean hole as well. You should also throw down a shop towel below to catch the water or the glass disc if it does fall. You'll want to run the drill on a fairly high speed, which makes a corded drill best, but a cordless drill on high speed will work as well. Start the drill and begin your cut. Make sure to bring the drill down slow and apply almost no pressure. Let the bit do the work for you. Some of you may find it easier to apply the correct amount of pressure if you remove the springs from the drill guide. Stop every 20 seconds or so to make sure the bit is still cool and add more water if needed. It should take a few minutes to get about 3/4 of the way through. The last fourth of the way, you should make sure you're not applying any pressure at all. Again, just let the drill bit cut through the glass and do the work for you. This part should take another few minutes. Right before you break through to the other side is the most important time to apply as little pressure as possible so the hole on the other side is clean. This might still sound a bit intimidating, but after the first hole, you'll feel like a pro because it's really a lot easier than it looks. There are a lot of different types of plumbing fittings, valves, and methods common to aquariums, starting with soft tubing and hard PVC plumbing. Soft tubing is the easiest and most forgiving solution, uses barbed insert fittings to connect the pieces and these ratchet clamps to ensure a watertight seal. The most popular type of soft tubing for this is reinforced braided tubing because it's much less likely to kink than other types. It's super important that the tubing never kinks because it could cut off the tank from the life support equipment in your sump or overflow the tank onto the floor. This soft braided tubing has a natural bend to it from being coiled, which can be somewhat difficult to work with. The best way to deal with the bend is to heat it up by soaking in a bath of super hot water. If you're careful not to overdo it, you could also use a heat gun as well. There are a few advantages to going with hard PVC plumbing. It's literally impossible to kink, it doesn't have that bend to it, it doesn't allow any light through so algae can't grow inside, it's easier to manifold, and frankly it just looks a lot cooler. While aesthetics might not be critical to everyone, to many reefers it's important that the equipment side of things looks just as cool as the display itself. If you go PVC, you can go white, which is found at basically every big box hardware store. Schedule 80 pipe, which is a reinforced industrial gray, or colored pipe that comes in blue, green, yellow, red, orange, you name it. You can find your typical white fitting at most hardware stores. We stock these low-profile white beveled edge fittings, which are a bit sleeker, as well as a reinforced Schedule 80 industrial gray fittings. Quick overview of the basic fitting names. A slip fitting is designed to have a pipe glued directly into the fitting using a primer and solvent. A threaded fitting is designed to have other fittings screwed directly into them with Teflon tape. Any Teflon tape will probably work, but it comes in different densities, widths, and qualities. Easiest way to identify the density and quality is to give it a quick squeeze. If it's smushy, it probably has a lower density and quality. If it's hard or clearly states high density on the packaging, it's probably a high quality tape. We stock this 3/4 inch size that I find a bit easier to use on larger fittings. Another popular type of fitting is a street fitting, which has a spigot side that is directly inserted into other fittings and valves. Whenever possible, I try to use street fittings because they're lower profile, save on space, and I don't have to cut and glue the small connector pieces. Similar to that, you can find other spigot fittings which transition into barbed ends for connection to soft tubing, spigot ends which transition to a male threaded end, and spigots which can be inserted to change the size of the opening to smaller size called bushings, which come in both slip and female threaded options. Another popular fitting are unions, which come in a slip and threaded version. These are used to create a break in the pipe so you can disassemble your plumbing for maintenance, cleaning, valve replacement, or even change some of your plumbing in the future for new equipment without cutting everything apart. One huge side advantage of using unions is you don't have to be as concerned about gluing the fitting on the pipe at the perfect angle, which can be somewhat difficult and pretty frustrating if you make a mistake. With unions, you can just loosen the connection and adjust as needed. If you're going to go through all the trouble to hard plumb your tank, do yourself a favor and put the unions on anywhere you can. I promise you won't regret it and you'll be happy they're there when you need to use them. There are 4 main types of valves: gate valves, ball valves, check valves, and needle valves. Gate valves have a gate that slowly drops as you spin the handle and used to make precise adjustments to water flow, and great for applications like our Bean Animal Overflow, where we're fine-tuning the flow to precisely match the amount of water pumped into the tank. Ball valves are primarily designed as a shut-off valve for simple on or off function. They can be used to adjust flow rates with a bit of trial and error if needed, or create artificial head pressure by partially closing them as well. Both gate and ball valves can be found in white at most hardware stores. These valves are inexpensive and work when you originally install them, but the ball valves in particular become increasingly hard to turn as time goes on, often almost impossible after a few years. These CPEX valves are more expensive but turn consistently fluidly now and in the future. They come with unions installed on both ends for easy removal, and a key you can use to tighten the seal, which means the valve is almost certainly going to outlast the tank it's installed on. Check valves are used to prevent siphons and the backflow of water, particularly on your return, so water doesn't drain from the tank through the returns and overflow the sump when the power goes out. However, check valves are not perfect and they can fail if something gets stuck on the surface of the seal. The best way to prevent siphoning when the return pump is off is make sure your returns are positioned just slightly below the water level. So check valves are really more of a redundancy valve that protects you if your returns were to ever get bumped lower than they should be, as well as a convenience that keeps the tank full as possible during maintenance. Check valves come in a variety of forms, but the most popular are the flapper and Y designs. The flapper versions are the least expensive and come with unions, which makes them pretty popular, but they're hard to clean and maintain. The Y design allows you to unscrew and clean the seal and the seat. This not only makes this type of valve more reliable, but the ability to maintain it means the valve is likely to outlast the tank itself. The last type of valve is a needle valve. These are designed to regulate flow down to a slow drip. There aren't a lot of needs for this type of thing, but there are some specialized applications like a calcium reactor where they can come in handy. Once you get all your plumbing together, gluing PVC is pretty easy, but there's some steps a lot of people skip. All this plumbing is not cheap, and fixing leaks often means cutting it all apart, and we want to avoid that, so my advice is do not skip steps. You can use a variety of saws or specialized tools to cut your PVC. I like to use these cheap miter boxes to keep the cut straight. Once you have a cut edge, take a piece of sandpaper to remove the burrs and irregularities from the edge. If you don't remove them, the burrs can create grooves in the solvent when you slide the pipe in and result in leaks. When we glue the pipe and fittings together, what we're really doing is using a solvent to chemically bond the surface of the pipe and fitting together. First step of that process is applying a primer which softens the surface of the pipe and fitting to get it ready for that chemical bond. Use an applicator to liberally apply primer to both fitting and pipe. Shortly after, apply the PVC cement to both fitting and pipe as well. When you insert the pipe, push it in completely into the fitting while giving it a quarter turn. Once it hits the end of the fitting, hold it there tightly for 15 seconds or so. The bonding process causes the plastic to swell and it'll push the pipe out slightly if you don't hold it in there tightly. Accurate measurements and an ideal bond requires the pipe to be fully inserted into the fitting. After that, allow the bond to cure for 24 hours and it's ready for water. Make sure you dry fit the entire project before you start gluing, and mark the pipe and fittings on all the elbows so you know the exact angles that they need to be glued at. The use of unions can remove the marking and angle requirements with elbows, which makes the whole project a lot easier and increases the chances of doing this right the first time. The last type of plumbing fitting we're going to cover is lock line. This is a modular tubing option which is most often used for returns where the water is pumped back into the tank. There are a variety of different nozzles, shutoff valves, check valves, Ys, and it comes in 1/2 and 3/4 inch options. After you've figured out your plumbing, you're going to need to select a return pump. You want something that's quiet and reliable. Both of these things are a matter of perspective. Every pump will make some amount of noise. How quiet a pump is really just a comparison to other pumps at the same price point. I'd make sure to read the reviews of the pump that you're looking at because nothing is more important than real reefers' experiences. At BRS, we've attempted to make this a bit easier for you by being pretty selective about the brands that we stock and only offering the brands that we think offer a unique value at their particular price point and that we would use ourselves. The quiet one from Lifeguard is a great lower cost option and what the team here at BRS recommends for the most affordable pumps. The Synchro Silent series by Seache is probably the most trusted brand out there and what most of us personally use whenever we can. There are also some newer DC pumps out there which have some unique advantages, one of which is most are basically silent. There's almost no chance you could hear any of them over the other equipment in your sump. They're often very small for the flow size they create and have unique controllability options. Like many emerging technologies, there have been a lot of new DC pumps entering the reefing scene in the last couple years. We feel like the Waveline brand has surfaced as the best affordable and reliable option. Also pretty exciting is Ecotech is just about to release their DC return pump, which is sure to have a whole laundry list of features never seen in our industry before. Okay, let's get to plumbing this tank. We're going to use PVC plumbing because it's the most reliable, has the most options, and simply looks the best as well. We selected gray Schedule 80 fittings and blue pipe, which is my personal favorite color combination. First step was to plumb the overflow box with the Bean Animal variant overflow. Inside the box, there's a couple of elbows used to create the primary siphon. The second is our stability pipe, and similar to the first, but about 3/4 of an inch taller and has a hole drilled in the top to prevent a full siphon. It's important that the top and the hole of the stability overflow is positioned low enough that it would still get fully submerged if the primary overflow started to back up. The third is our emergency overflow with an open pipe that's at least a 1/2 inch taller than the top of the other two, but still lower than the top of the overflow box. The primary overflow is plumbed to the tank with a gate valve with the stability overflow installed right next to it, and the emergency overflow is plumbed to the filtration area of the tank. We install the emergency overflow here because it'll make a lot of noise when it splashes down to let us know that there's an issue we need to fix with the primary if something were to ever clog it. You can also see we installed quite a few unions to make installation and maintenance a lot easier. For the return pump, we're going to use the new Vectra from Ecotech. This pump hasn't actually been released yet, and I've never used it, which makes it a somewhat interesting selection for a build series like this. But Ecotech is one of the few companies in this industry who has a long track record of success, and they've built a lot of trust with me over the years, so I'm pretty confident this is going to be the best return pump that I've ever used once we get this tank filled with water and turn it on. Notice we installed a short piece of silicone tubing between the pump and the start of our hard plumbing. This will completely eliminate any vibration transfer from the pump to the hard plumbing. This is more important with AC pumps than DC pumps because DC pumps are a bit quieter, but it's a good idea regardless. Off that, we plumb the sump to both return points, lock line inside the tank to disperse the water, and check valves here for redundancy and convenience. Down here we plumbed a series of valves as a manifold we can use to feed the equipment as we add it. If needed, we can use the ball valves here installed right before the returns to create some artificial head pressure to drive the items that we plumb to the manifold. Also notice the pipe clamps we use to hold everything securely to the wall. These aren't absolutely required in most cases, but a nice touch and added support. The plumbing here achieves all of our goals with quiet operation, redundancy, it's maintainable, and room to add new equipment or upgrades in the future with the manifold. Not to mention it looks pretty cool as well. Next week, we're going to talk about electrical needs for the tank and install our solution, which you don't want to miss. The following week, we're going to get water into the tank, so hit that subscribe button. If you're interested in learning more about the products that we discussed in this week's episode, you can check them out by clicking this link. See you next week with week 6 of the BRS 160 Electrical.